Yeah, sure. So my name's Frank Ziller. I'm the CTO at Cloud5 Communications. Cloud5 Communications is a managed service provider really focused on the hospitality industry, primarily hotels or hotel properties or conference properties. I've been with Cloud5 for about a year and a half, and then I spent about 8 years prior to that with an MSP that looked very similar to Cloud5, but really focused on the legal market, specifically large global law firms. And then prior to that, I spent 20 years in large enterprises ranging from banking to business services and manufacturers. Yeah, so I think for me, that came together when I was in college. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, although I knew I had an inclination to things that were either technical or mechanically oriented. So while I was in school, took a bunch of engineering classes and IT classes, and then ultimately determined that, hey, I think computer science is where it's at for me. It kind of lended itself to the way my mind worked. And so that's kind of how it started. And then I worked my way through school most of the time. So I was actually working in IT. And I really, initially liked the idea of solving business problems with technology. That was really kind of something that was always interesting to me. Insofar as, hey, it's easy to build the best solution, quote unquote, every time. It's harder to come up with what are your exact business cases and how do you develop a solution that meets those in just the right way, i.e., it's really easy to really overbuild something or underbuild something. Getting something that is purpose built for a business from a technical standpoint is a different thing altogether. And so early on in my career as an engineer, I really liked building something, solving business problems, whatever they might be. Then after doing that for a while, then I gained more interest in, hey, how do I take an overall IT organization and how do I lead that to get business results? So now it kind of transitioned away from a product or technology to how do I lead a team to meet whatever those business requirements from a tech standpoint. And that's where I get really excited is, at Cloud5, I have responsibility both for IT and product development, which is very tech heavy. So developing solutions that contemplate how do I take the totality of an IT organization and the resources they have, and how do I go do the same thing? And again, it's really easy to build out a solution to things a lot of times. It's a little bit harder to do it in a way that meets the functional needs of an organization, but also works within a set of financial parameters. And that all of a sudden becomes, a little bit harder thing to do. And then you marry that up with a CIO or a CIO role. You're usually doing that type of thing on multiple fronts, and you're wanting those things to come together in a meaningful way over time, from a strategy standpoint. So that's really been, the reason, the why on why I've done what I've done and why I've enjoyed it. Yeah, I think there's a couple. I think the two that I would mention are, the first one is just to kind of build on our AI conversation, is that there's a huge upside to all these platforms building AI into the components so you can use them. The disadvantage to that approach, which we haven't fully solved for, is that over time, you're ideally going to want to have an AI capability that has a view into the entire business. So the challenge we're going to have to work through is, if I fast forward 3 years down the road, or even 2 years down the road, it's possible that we're going to have an AI component within ServiceNow that only works within ServiceNow. We'll have an AI component in our ERP system that is just for ERP. Then you'll have an AI component in our CRM system, which is just for CRM. And then I can keep going, right? The question is, at some point, I'm kind of creating a problem that is not uncommon to deal with within an enterprise, and that is, hey, where is the authoritative place for that piece of data? I want one place to authoritatively know about that data. Well, now we're kind of creating that problem in a different light, where I'm creating islands of AI over time. And how do I solve for that so that I have one AI overlay that sees everything versus these AI components that are tied to platforms? And I don't know how we're going to solve that, but that's one that we're thinking through now, because strategy-wise, we need to be prepared for that. Then the second one is, like everyone else, we're being asked to do more with less. That's kind of, and to a very large extent, I think that's a viable question that every IT organization should be adding and answering. And the reason for that is that in theory, technology, especially with AI, is becoming more and more capable. It can do more things with us. So you could make the argument if I have all this software, for example, out in the enterprise that does all these cool things, that in theory, the amount of labor to do those things should go down. And so, the question is, how do we leverage technical capabilities, whether it's AI or otherwise, to make every aspect of the business more efficient? Whether it's IT, administrators or engineers building a project, whether it's the sales process and getting through the proposal to order to cash process faster, how do we, it's a constant question we're asking ourselves, hey, how do we in an obvious way leverage the technology investments that we're using so that our labor costs are going down because those capabilities are doing things more for us across the business. And that is a little bit more of a challenge, but it's probably germane, as most people are probably starting to work on budgets. It's starting to become budget season for 2026. This is a question that's top of mind. Hey, are we getting all the benefits we wanted to get out of these? And if not, why? And how do we course correct so that as we do more things and are asked to do more for the organization, that we're freeing up cycles for people to do those things because we're able to make the operation more efficient. Yeah, at a high level, it usually starts with both understanding what the current problem is and then understanding what the desired outcome is. That's the first thing we always ask before we do anything else. What's it doing today, and what's the desired outcome? I always ask the desired outcome question because it's another way of asking what's the answer to the problem that allows folks that maybe aren't as familiar with the technology to be able to articulate that. Once we have that information, then we start looking and saying, hey, is there a tool in the toolbox that we already own that does that thing, whatever that thing is? And if the answer is yes, then obviously the question is, how do we further leverage whatever that investment was? If the answer is no, well, now we're into kind of an engineering exercise that says, hey, what are the requirements and how do we go through and evaluate different options to get to whatever that functional outcome is? Then from there, we would take our proposed solution, go back to the business and restate what we thought the problem was so they can come back and validate what they said. To say it a different way, we're just going to repeat back to them what we think we heard on the requirements side of things. Once we get through the process of shoring that up, are there any gaps or any adjustments we need to make? At that point, you kind of have a complete picture of what solving this particular problem looks like from a timing and from a cost standpoint, and how will that workflow or process integrate with what the rest of the business is already doing. And then from there, it's into implementation, whatever that is, and maintain a constant feedback loop with our business partners on how we're working through that process, and then collaborating with them at times where we may need to pivot or make an adjustment during the implementation process. Yeah, that's a good question. For me, that's a really simple answer. And a lot of times people like to talk about technology as being some combination of people, process, and technology. And I agree with that. It's always an interesting conversation to ask somebody as a thought exercise, which of those is the most important. And hearing people's rationale of which of those three is most important is interesting. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, by the way, but hearing their answer and the rationale behind that answer is always interesting. I can tell you that my view on it is that if I were to have to stack rank them, I would almost always rank people as the most important, process being the second most important, and technology being third. A lot of times from engineers, I'll get a cross-eyed look when I tell them that because they're thinking in terms of, hey, a technology solution is kind of akin to a wrench in a toolbox, and hey, what wrench do I need is what they tend to immediately think about. I'm going to look at it differently and just say my experience over 2 decades plus is that more times than not, the technology is not the determining factor. The technology tends to be malleable and it'll do what you need to do. Not always, but more often, much more often than not. Then you're into okay, so if the technology is not the most important thing, you're down to process and people. And now this gets to be a really interesting question. Because I think the process is critically important. I always look at it as the people. And the reason why I think it's the people is that, one, if you get the right people in, they can develop the right process and they can select the right technology. The second thing is that the technical team's ability to communicate their perception or perspective around the technology is really important. I can have the smartest engineer in the world on a team, and if they can't effectively communicate to people what they're thinking or what they see and collaborate, that really great thinking is all for naught. It's going nowhere. And so for that reason, I tend to think the people are the most important component, because if you get the right people, and they're engaging, you tend to close the gap between, someone that's not in IT and someone that is in IT, and they're solving a problem. Whether it's a break fix issue at the service desk, or whether it's a complex project where we're implementing a new system that doesn't exist today, that tends to be the case and has been my experience. So I always look at the people as being the kind of the glue that holds all of that together. I think understanding industry trends, whether it relates to, a particular technology or a particular way to solve operational or client needs. So as an MSP, we're constantly looking for opportunities to add capabilities that our customers need. So that is obviously a pretty big focus area. And then I'd say the same thing internally. I mean, we're constantly looking for those same opportunities. And I think there are times where there's so many of them, sometimes it's challenging to quantify which one makes the most sense. We try to do it like I was telling you earlier, when we define the outcome at the beginning of a project, we try to define what that should look like. But, I think there's a little bit of hysteria around AI. Like, you get into the non-technical people in a business, and they tend to think that AI is just this magic box that is like superhuman, that knows everything. Well, I mean, we're probably 50 years from that. What you're going to have is artificial intelligence capabilities that have broad and deep subject matter expertise for the foreseeable future, and where are the right places to go take advantage of that. And I'm particularly sensitive to this, because I did an AI project early on about 7 years ago where we built something from scratch. And the challenge there was that the system was fine, but we had data from a legacy system from 20 years prior that the data structure did not lend itself to an AI opportunity for a number of reasons. So, I'm always a little pessimistic about, hey, can the AI really do the thing someone's talking about? Or can they do part of it? And so constantly evaluating, hey, what are those opportunities is something we spend a lot of time on. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that I've been with Cloud5 for about a year and a half, and we already had a relationship with Revelo at that point that was working out well, and so we've continued that relationship. If you were to ask me why, I think we've indirectly answered that question in our conversation today, and that's just because it's the right people in the right roles, the right subject matter expertise, the right drive to get problems solved, and Revelo functions as an extension of our team, which is exactly what we're looking for. And for those reasons, it's been a successful partnership. Yeah, I mean, not a lot has changed outside of that. We're expanding our business model and we're adding additional services that we don't offer today, like particularly in the IT managed services and IT managed security services offerings. We continue to build out more capabilities, which require more integrations with systems, which requires us to acquire new technology to provide some of those MSP capabilities to our customers or prospective clients. And that's what's changed. I mean, outside of that, the mandate is still the same: grow the business, make our customers super happy with what we do for them. And so that hasn't changed. Just the ways about which we go about delighting our customers continues to evolve. We have more ways to delight our customers. Well, I think the advanced advice I'd give them would be simply to understand where, the type of person that you need and within a particular role. So like when we go and we source a new resource to work with at Ravello, we go about that just like we're hiring the person onto our team. We go through a very similar interview process and such. And for us, I don't know if it's true with all your clients, but the ability for people to function and operate just like they were a Cloud5 employee is super important. And I assume that's important to other people. And so the advice is to really make sure you do a culture check and a personality check in addition to the capabilities to make sure you get the right resource on your team that can be super productive.